All right, thank you for joining us and welcome to OpenInfra Live. The OpenInfra Foundation's only weekly show, and we are doing this every single week at 1400 UTC. And today we are excited to talk about jobs. And this show is something that we put together earlier this year, and it's been incredible the response we've seen. Thousands of people every week are watching each of these episodes. So the community has really turned out with ideas and participation, and everyone has been joining and asking questions. So feel free to do that throughout the show today. Comments, questions, let us know where you're joining from, etc. It's really exciting to see how global the participation is from around the community. And today on the show, before we jump in and bring in the guests, I wanted to start with a little bit of breaking news. So in the hottest news off the presses for OpenInfra these days, we just learned this week that Microsoft is joining the OpenInfra Foundation as a platinum member. So thank you to Microsoft. And really, I think this is just an amazing reflection of all the work every one of you have done in the community for many years, working on open source projects that really matter for infrastructure. And seeing Microsoft come in as a platinum member, I think really reflects well on everybody's work for many years. And Ryan Van Wyck, who's been involved in OpenStack and Airship and other parts of our community for a long time, has a nice quote here about why this is important to the next decade of open infra that we are embarking on together as the OpenInfra Foundation. So hopefully others of you, if you aren't already members or involved, will learn more about it today and get involved. So with that, I actually want to talk about today's episode and our main topic. This is round 2 of our jobs episode. So one of the amazing things about open source is that you can participate, and anyone anywhere in the world can participate, and you can even get paid to do it. So today we're talking about jobs in open source. And so I want to bring in our panelists and have everybody introduce themselves. So welcome everybody to OpenInfra Live. And so first I'll go to Tytus. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Mark. Hello, everyone. This is Tytus Kurek. I'm a product manager at Canonical, the company behind Ubuntu. And I'm mostly focused on the data center part of our business, including Ubuntu Server and OpenStack. I've been involved in OpenStack since the Grizzly release, so I've seen a lot of iterations moving forward.
That's great. Thank you for being on the show and for being involved since Grizzly. That's many releases for those of you who haven't been following along with the crazy pace of OpenStack. So next, let's go to Suresh. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Mark. I'm Suresh. I'm based here in Portland, Oregon. I'm a senior principal engineer at Intel, and these days I'm focusing on cloud software, and that includes a lot of infrastructure, everything from the orchestration layer to the networking layer to runtime execution in the pod. So happy to be here.
Great. So Suresh from Intel and Tytus from Canonical. Now we're going to go to Ken.
Hey, thanks, Mark. Ken Savich. I am the North America infrastructure practice lead for Red Hat. Came to Red Hat from Rackspace, actually, after 9 years at Rackspace. So I've been kind of involved with all the infrastructure stuff for quite some time. I also lead a group of sort of elite OpenStack hackers at Red Hat as well, and happy to be here.
Great. Well, I spent a little time at Rackspace myself, so good to hear your background there. And Hind from VEXXHOST, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Hind Naser from VEXXHOST. I'm the business development director here at VEXXHOST, and we're an infrastructure as a service provider with public clouds in North America and Europe, and we also deploy private clouds for companies a little bit all over the world at this point.
Great, wonderful. Well, thank you all for joining us. As I said, open source is all about participation, and if you can participate and get paid, all the better, right? And so today we're going to get to know each of you and a little bit about your backgrounds and your companies. And then after the discussion for a bit, we will go into letting each of you share your current job openings, and hopefully everybody out there in the audience will get involved, post questions, comments, let us know where you're joining from around the world, and we'll try to get the audience involved as we go. And so with that, let me start with the first question, which was, how did you get involved in open source personally? And why don't we go to Suresh for that one?
Hey, thanks, Mark. Great question. So I got involved by just starting to participate in the community. So I initially opened some issues, right, which I thought were important, that led to a lot of discussions. And then I suggested that I could make some code contributions, right? And people encouraged that, and I started to write some PRs, and then there was lots of feedback. I didn't quite anticipate all the details of the feedback, and I'm quite amazed at how much people take the time to do all those things. And that's kind of how I got started, is just starting in the community, right? And opening some things up in the community, see what engagement people kind of got, and then being able to make some actual kind of code contributions. And one of the things about open source that I really kind of enjoyed was many of these conferences provide you an opportunity to get started, right? So it could be getting started on a simple kind of like issue, which may be a test kind of like bug, something that might only take you half an hour. So communities are very welcoming. So I encourage everyone to start small, and then you can keep growing.
That's great. Yeah, I think that's very good advice, and it brings to mind actually that the Outreachy program. We have been a big supporter of that at the OpenInfra Foundation for many years, and some incredible talented folks have gotten their start in open source through that program. And some of those interns or ex-interns are working in the community now, and some of them may even be tuning in. So let's make sure that we support that effort. So next question I wanted to ask was really about your company's culture. So people out there that may be trying to decide, where to apply or who to follow up with. And Tytus, why don't we go to you and ask kind of what's unique about Canonical's culture?
Absolutely. So at Canonical, we believe that talent is distributed equally across the entire world, right? And this kind of impacts our culture in terms of jobs and hiring and how we structure the company, right? So what's unique about Canonical is that we actually don't have like big offices where people come and work like from the office, but most of our employees are distributed across the entire world, right? And most of us work from home. I am actually working from home at the moment, which is a great opportunity, right? We obviously have our headquarters in London and a couple of satellite offices, but we have employees from more than 50 countries. They're mostly working from home, and we're just meeting on a regular basis for sprints or various other internal events. COVID has slightly impacted that, but we hope we're going to get back to traveling soon.
That's great. And I think, this is such an important question that I might actually ask everybody to answer it. So get ready. But I don't know if Hind, would you like to jump in and talk a little bit about VEXXHOST and kind of the company culture? Because I think this is something people really want to know more about.
Absolutely. So at VEXXHOST, our entire infrastructure stack is based on open source tools. So we take a lot from these communities. That's why we feel like it's super, super important for us to be giving back. And there's a few ways that we do this. There's a few ways that you could be doing this if you were to join the VEXXHOST team. So I think the most important one is contributing code back. At VEXXHOST, we don't do things locally. Any changes, bug fixes, features that we feel could benefit either us or our clients, we try to push that upstream to help the entire community. Things like volunteering our time to have different roles within different communities. So whether it's project team leads or helping out someone who needs help, we feel, again, super important that that's something that we need to do. As well as, like you were saying earlier, the different events. We really enjoy attending these events, but we feel like these are this is a great way for us to contribute back to the community. So if you're part of the technical team and there is a tool that you use, are super passionate about, or you have a lot of knowledge about, and you feel like you want to give talks and share your knowledge with the team, with the rest of the community, that's something that we're huge advocates of and we like to do here at VEXXHOST.
That's great. And you mentioned that the project team lead. So for those of you who are not really immersed in OpenStack, those are very important elected positions within each of the subcomponents or projects within OpenStack, and the other projects within the OpenInfra Foundation have similar concepts. And so that elected leadership is really earned through community engagement. And at the same time, it's really important that employers really support those people in those roles, because that's a big job. And so having employers saying, yeah, we're going to let you put a lot of your time into that kind of work really benefits the community. And so I think maybe I'll go to Ken next. Suresh, maybe reconnecting here. So Ken, what would you say is kind of unique about your company culture over at Red Hat?
Well, that's a good question. I think, ultimately, Red Hat has been around, has been open for about 28 years now. And it kind of really permeates the culture, always has. At Red Hat, there's not really a concept of, oh, you're now going to go work on open source stuff, because it's so ingrained in everything that we do, that it's just part of everything. It's a true meritocracy as well. In that the best ideas always win. And I think that, at the end of the day, this is the way the company was designed, the way it started, and the way that it'll always continue to be.
Awesome. Well, let's go to Suresh. I think he's rejoined us. What's unique about your company culture at Intel?
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Sorry, I had to drop. I think what distinguishes Intel is innovation is very much in our in our culture, and there's a lot of opportunities provided for innovation, right? So engineers have the opportunity to take like an idea from like a concept to an open source project. So one I would like to highlight is that's part of OpenInfra is a project called Kata Containers that provides you secure containers. And so this is an idea that an engineer kind of like had at a conference, right? And then there was sort of support in the company to be able to bring that project. And Intel is also another aspect of our culture is there's a lot of decisions that are driven through data. So everything is kind of data driven, and open source is a key ingredient that enables all our silicon to have the magic that everyone is able to create on top of it.
That's great. And a couple of things that just jumped out at me. First of all, Kata Containers is a super exciting project, and we have had past episodes. You can go back and find those on YouTube and rewatch them about Kata Containers, and I'm sure we'll have future episodes. But really cool project for secure and performant containers with lightweight virtualization. I'm oversimplifying it. It's a very, very awesome project, but it's great to see Intel hiring, employing, investing in engineers that make that particular project successful within the OpenInfra landscape. And the other thing that I just wanted to acknowledge is we have such an incredibly diverse community that's joining geographically from all over the world, and people have been popping into the chat on the live stream and talking about where they're from. So welcome, whether it's good morning, good evening, or good night, wherever you are. This is the amazing thing to me about open source and open infrastructure. So that just gets me excited. But let me get back to my questions, get back on track for just a moment. So how about this for Ken? Is there something about, I think it's no surprise that open source, Red Hat, I think people know that. That's not going to shock anybody. It's a great thing to have associated with your company. But is there something that would surprise people that they might not know about Red Hat, Ken?
Oh boy. So I was going to say actually that all of our code is open. That always has been. I think a lot of people are shocked to know that, because the concept of everything being open is kind of strange. I guess that's the only thing I can think of at the moment.
Okay, sorry. I guess maybe I'm just been in open source so long that it's not a surprise to me. But I think that you're absolutely right that in fact there probably are many people out there that just assume, okay, here's a company that's out there being financially successful and having customers and revenue, and everybody's buying the products and everything, that okay, therefore there must be some hidden secret, what's the thing that's not open source. And so
right.
It's probably a good reminder for me that not everybody actually does know that. So sorry if I messed up your your answer there with my being involved too long. I've been in the open source world so long, I've forgotten there's stuff out there. That I saw a stat recently that 99% of all code bases have some open source in them. So it's crazy how things have changed over the years, but 28 years of Red Hat doing that is certainly not the norm out there. So thank you for answering that one. So here's another question that we had come in, which was, talk about maybe one of the more innovative projects that's going on at your company right now, and we'll see if maybe we go to Suresh on this one.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. So innovation is very important to Intel, and as Mark was talking about Kata containers, we have been continuing to innovate in that area. We have a project which is Cloud Hypervisor, which is even more lighter weight ability to run things like function as a service and other kinds of things very securely and fast. So that's an open source project you can kind of check out. And at Intel overall, there's a lot of other innovation that's kind of going on. One that your audience might be interested in is we just announced at the Intel Architecture Day something called IPUs, which is Infrastructure Processing Unit, right? And they allow you to accelerate part of the infrastructure so that the customer does not have to take on the cycles for executing infrastructure. So that's a new project, and it should be releasing soon, and I think we'll need a lot of help from everyone to take advantage of it so that the customers are benefiting.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've been trying to follow along with all the things happening in the hardware world that impact the software and vice versa, and there's such a rich set of innovations going on there that I don't think people would have predicted 10 years ago when we thought cloud was going to play out a certain way, and now you see new forms of processing units coming on the scene that are optimized, because that's how big cloud and edge is now as a market. It's actually influencing the hardware and not just the software, and they work in concert. So on this note of innovative stuff that's happening at different companies, why don't we go to Tytus? Do you want to share some light on Canonical's work in this kind of area?
Sure. So I think that's a very important question for everyone applying for jobs in open source. And first thing I want to say is that Canonical is just one big R&D company, as most of the companies that are here on this call, by the way. So everything we are doing is innovative and is exciting. And if it was not, I wouldn't be there, right? But if I was about to choose like the most interesting project, one thing that we've been working for a while, and we commit to continue working moving forward, is that when it comes to open source, we don't see a challenge anymore in terms of how the open source software is available, how is it packaged, how you can get it installed. It's all we managed to figure that out, right, with various Linux distributions and so on. The challenge we see, though, is how do you operate the software once you actually install it? What about your day two operations? How do you integrate it? How do you upgrade it? And there's been a very interesting concept that was mostly dominant in the Kubernetes space for now, which is the concept of operators. So a software that basically encapsulates the operations code for another software. And we are really willing and committing to leverage this concept, and we are building a portfolio of operators for the most popular open source applications. And a lot of the engineering time we spend is on creating those operators. So if this is something you would be willing to work on, then I guess we would love you to welcome on board.
Great. Well, that's awesome. And I think this question probably a good one for anyone else that wants to jump in. Ken, do you have something you wanna jump in on this one?
Yeah, I think in terms of innovation, Red Hat recently announced that we are building an automotive Linux distribution, and I think that's a pretty innovative product. I think it's going to be. We also, they also made some comments about it being eventually something that would go into manufacturing as well. So I think that's a really cool project to be part of, and there's a lot of really cutting edge stuff in that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. In talking with lots of companies all around the world that are using open source, for infrastructure, I think one of the biggest trends we've seen is just that particular kind of, whether you call it industrial IoT or, the automotive space, just manufacturing, some people call it industry 4.0. I'm kind of throwing a lot of buzzwords at everybody at once here, but it does seem like that is an area where there's a lot of innovation going on, and kind of open source is being looked to for that innovation. And anytime we see kind of giant, massive industries like that around the world turning to open source, of course, we're always excited about that. So there was a question that came in from the chat, and so I'm just going to mention it here, and we can bring it up on screen, hopefully. But I think someone was asking about, they said most open source jobs are located in America or Europe and don't accept applicants from the Asia Pacific or APAC region, despite being remote. So does anybody want to, I don't have anybody in mind here, but I believe that many of you do hire and have had employees in Asia Pacific. Does anybody want to jump in and answer this one?
Yeah, I can, for Red Hat's part, we have quite a few folks in APAC. We have offices in APAC, and we absolutely do hire in APAC for sure.
Good. Yeah.
And Intel, Intel too. So we have lots of opportunities. In fact, a lot of our OpenStack developers are in APAC, and we have lots of opportunities in APAC for open source efforts. But as people find the specific kind of requisitions on the job portal, so requisitions are tied to locations, and some requisitions will say that they are fully remote, right? And those are opportunities that people anywhere in the world can apply for.
Yeah, that's great, and I think that first of all, I appreciate everyone who is tuned in live and for asking the hard questions. I'm sure that is frustrating at times when you see companies, post a remote job, and it actually doesn't, you're not necessarily, fitting the requirements if you're in the Asia Pacific region. I think one of the great things about open source and OpenStack and Kata and a lot of these projects that we're working on is these are truly global communities, and the companies that hire for positions, many of them really, truly do hire anywhere in the world. I mean, we have 110,000 individual members of the OpenInfra Foundation in over 180 countries. And, but it's a good reminder that that's not the way the whole world works. As I said earlier, I've been in this so long, I probably have blinders on a little bit to not realizing, just how unusual that is in open source, OpenStack being, the exception. But hopefully over time, more of the world will work like that. That's, I would say, distributing the future more evenly every day. That's why I work on this stuff. So let me get back on track off my soapbox if I can here. So let's see. Some of the other questions that we had. What are the kinds of skills that are important or necessary to succeed in your company? And why don't we go to Tytus for this one?
Sure, absolutely. So at Canonical, we are looking for people who are passionate and talented and really want to work on the projects they get assigned. So we appreciate passion more than the actual skills. And when it comes to certifications and learning, we believe people can quickly get up to speed. And if there are any gaps on their side, like in terms of skills, they can quickly fill in those gaps. So what we care most is whether they are passionate about the technology, about open source, and whether they are really willing to work at Canonical and move the projects forward. That's what we're looking for.
Okay, great. So does anybody else want to jump on this one, or should I go to the next question?
Mark, I can jump on this one. This
Please.
one too.
Go ahead, Suresh.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the aspect of innovation, right, is it continues to be kind of like very key. And could you remind me the original question again, Mark?
Yeah, what are the kinds of skills that are important or necessary, to succeed in your company?
Yeah. So there are basically three aspects that I would say are kind of like very important. So one is if you are participating in a community, right, to get recognized in the community, to be recognized either as a committer in the community, to get recognized as a steering committee member or something like that. That's one kind of like aspect, which is kind of more external facing. And then the one that is kind of internal facing is to be able to get a good understanding of what is the hardware and what is the product, right? Intel is a manufacturing company that makes a lot of hardware, and our software enables that hardware to kind of like shine. And then the third aspect, which is very critical to success, is to be able to we often hear from customers about their problems and about their pain points, is to be able to address those pain points, right? And very often they will want some solution that has been sort of upstreamed into a particular kind of like community, right? And so doing those external community facing, internal Intel kind of hardware, and then external customer, all those three things are really critical.
Good. Thank you. And Ken, do you want to jump in on this as well?
Sure. Yeah. I think, ultimately at Red Hat, it really just takes it's about passion. There is, the basis of experience that you've got to have with whatever, role you're going to go into. But at the end of the day, we want everyone to be passionate about their work, willing to learn. We have a really robust internal programs for learning, and all of our associates at Red Hat take advantage of that. So I'd echo a lot of what Tytus said. It's more about do you love what you're doing? Are you passionate about it? And are you willing to collaborate to the end of the world, right?
I love it. I once did a keynote called "Collaborate or Die," which might be a little overhyped, but we believe in collaboration. So I think it is really important, and I love seeing the common threads here across all the companies. I think collaboration, culture, passion, just really believing in these projects. I think. I keep talking about the magic of open source, but it really does bring together people that are working on a common mission at many different companies and countries, and I think it's one of the things that's really awesome. And I think in terms of how we do come together in the face of adversity, this kind of brings me to my next question, which is about COVID. Right? We'd be remiss if we didn't acknowledge that this has been a very hard 2020. Are we still in 2020? I don't know, but it's been a hard year and a half, however long it's been. It keeps going. So, Hind, why don't we go to you on this one? So, kind of how has COVID impacted your teams and your company?
So before COVID, our remote versus not remote teams were pretty split. So anyone who was working in The technical side engineers, they were all spread a little bit all over the world. They've always had the chance to work from home. But everyone else, so in terms of marketing, sales, management, we had remote, in-person offices in Montreal, Canada, which we love. And there was always this debate whether working from home is better or working at the office and getting to see your colleagues. And then once COVID hit, we had no chance to actually start working from home for everyone. And that's when we realized there's so many more advantages to working from home. So we actually, a few months ago, decided that we're going to be a remote-only company. And that allowed us to actually expand the pool of people that we could start working with. And personally, over the last year, I've had the chance to work with people on my team that without the remote, I would not have had the chance to work with. There's so much talent around the world. And I guess the silver lining of this is that we got to hire more people from around the world and get to work with different people from around the world.
Thank you. That's a great answer. And I think that it is important to see the silver linings, and it certainly has kind of forced, I would say, many companies pretty much, out there in the whole tech landscape to, if they weren't remote first, they had to learn it in a hurry. So I think that there are definitely silver linings to that. So I've got a couple more questions, but does anyone else want to address that one, or should I jump on to the next one?
I can address it. For my team, my direct team, we were all remote already, as Red Hat has a lot of remote associates, and but it has kind of forced the issue on some things. In some ways, it's been easier for us to collaborate on projects with customers because we all can just kind of virtually go in and do it, as opposed to flying there and dealing with the logistics of being in person and everything. But it's also we've also had to work very hard at trying to have some kind of normalcy. One of the things that my team does is that we have a happy hour every Friday at the end of the day, which kind of gives us, some sense of normalcy in these crazy times that we're in.
Good. Well, yeah, Tytus.
I'd like to jump into this one if I can, Mark, as well.
Please do.
So, I'd say at Canonical, and the same as for Red Hat, for example, I think we were very well set for COVID, as we all mostly remote. So most of our employees are working from home, as I said at the beginning. So this did not really impact us, but I think it created a culture so that as we were meeting on regular basis still, since we were traveling for some internal events, so many times our culture was let's figure that out once we meet in person, right? Now we know we have to solve things because we don't know where are we going to meet, right? So I think it impacted our culture slightly, but in a very positive way, right? And obviously, we can't wait until travels are, getting back again so that we could see each other, hopefully, next year.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, it certainly has impacted from the foundation community organizing standpoint. We haven't been able to have in-person summits, which has been, sort of the hallmark of our community's, ultimate getting together face to face. And we've had 20 some odd summits, and we've not been able to be in person for a bit. And we're hoping that if everything goes well, we'll be able to do that again next year. But it impacts, cross companies, cross communities, in all those ways as well. What we would traditionally be getting back together. So one of the questions that came in from chat was about where somebody might get started if they don't already have open source experience. And I think that Suresh, I might throw this one to you simply because you kind of mentioned earlier how you got started in open source, but if anybody else wants to jump in, feel free.
Yeah, no, I think this is a great question, and one I think a lot of people have some fear about, right? And so So at Intel, as some of the other companies have also been kind of like mentioning, right, the specific skill of like being a top committer on an open source project is not a requirement, right? We also hire a lot of recent college graduates who very often we see in the college curriculum, they don't really have this aspect of open source or doing things in the community. So that's kind of not really a requirement. And I think in terms of to get started, I would definitely start with like something that's kind of very easy. You can always like fix like a documentation issue, right? You can start from there, or you can build a test out, or you can take like an open issue, right, and say that, hey, I kind of want to support this, right? These are all things that you can kind of do, but start with something that's kind of very, very easy. And then also some communities have some office hours and other kinds of like times where they're all mentors might be available, and you can actually get some support from some community members on the area that you're looking to go into.
Thank you. So one last question, I'll throw this one to Ken, and then we can actually talk about the job openings of every company. Hopefully all of you want to get the word out, and everybody in the audience wants to know what you're hiring for. I think they've got a lot of people tuned in for that. But the last question before we go to the slides with the job postings, I'll ask Ken. So how important are certifications and training to open source positions?
Oh, you know, I don't think they're that important. I think that it's good to have. When I hire folks, I don't look at how many acronyms they have on their resume, though. So it's great to have them. It depends on what the role is. But again, you know, experience it trumps certifications for sure, in my mind. And just you know. I like, you know, there's so many different ones. Some of them, you see them in resumes and you're like, what? I don't even know what that is. I got to look it up. You know, so I think I'd say at the end of the day, it's good to have them, but not a requirement.
Great. I love that answer. I think, and it kind of marries well or pairs well with what Suresh said about if you're trying to get started, like look at the documentation, fix a small, you know, typo, fix, you know, anything that helps you learn kind of the tool chains and how the community operates. You don't have to jump in the deep end as far as something super technical. It can simply be just getting yourself familiar with the community and having the community kind of know who you are. And there are a lot of things you can start with, basic issues to kind of get your feet wet. And I think that's a great way to get started. And oftentimes you build that experience up, and it may actually be more important than, you know, how many acronyms you have on your resume. And so I like that answer. So now we're actually going to tell you who is hiring and what they're hiring for. So we're going to start with Tytus, and we've got some slides. And so Tytus, why don't we throw it to you and tell us what's going on at Canonical with your job openings.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark. So let's get started. So if you are still wondering why you should join Canonical, let me just briefly recap what we've been basically talking about, what I've been talking about here for a while, right? So first of all, Canonical equals to open source. Like everything we do is open source, and all the projects we are driving are 100% open source. So if you want to work in an open source company, then we're that company, basically, right? We work on a variety of cutting edge technologies, including kata containers as well, in our case distribution, operators, IoT, basically everything from public cloud to the edge. So there is a variety of job openings. I'm pretty sure you'll be able to find something that matches the best for your skills. And if you want, then we're happy to help you on that path as well. You'll have an opportunity to work with great and talented people. Like basically everyone who works at Canonical says people here are great. So there must be something in it, right? Like if everyone is saying that, then that's probably true. Since we're not a very big company. We have a pretty flat organizational structure. So if you have some very interesting ideas in the open source space, if you'd like to bring them to the product team or even to the CEO, you'll get this opportunity. I think this is unique about us as well. We give our employees a lot of freedom in the workspace. We're not micromanaging them. We all work from home. I think 95% of our employees work from home. So this is also an amazing opportunity if you don't want to commute to an office every day. We used to travel before COVID for some internal events on a regular basis, and those events take place in various parts of the world, including Europe, Americas, Asia. So you'll get this opportunity with Canonical. Once travel is back to normal, hopefully next year. We have a bring your own device policy, so you'll be able to work on whatever is your best platform. What's your platform of choice? If that's Ubuntu, great, but if that's Mac OS, well, you're welcome. If we have a diversity and inclusion program, so we don't exclude anyone. We hire people from all parts of the world, and regardless of religion or anything else. And finally, last but not least, we make Ubuntu. So if you don't know Canonical, I hope you know Ubuntu at least. If you like Ubuntu, you're probably going to like Canonical. If you don't like Ubuntu, you'll get an opportunity to make it better. If we go to the next slide, please. We have around 100 of open roles available at the moment. Those are in engineering, tech ops, product, but also many other. So if you simply go to our careers portal, you'll be able to find a job that fits your requirements. And if you go to the next slide, please, if you're undecided and you don't really know what you're about to be working on, or if you're wondering how are you going to start your career, then we're happy to help you. There's even a page at the forefront of our careers page that basically helps to find you the best fit for your skills based on your existing experience, based on your based on your skills, based on your character. So you'll be able to find the role that suits you best. And finally, if this is convincing you, then come and join us. So you can visit our careers page at canonical.com/careers/all and simply apply for the job of your choice, and we'll be happy to welcome you on the board. And I think that's all from my side. So back to you, Mark.
All right. Thank you, Tytus. So next up, we're going to welcome Suresh to talk about the job openings at Intel. Take it away.
Very good. Yeah, thank you, Mark, and thank you for the OpenInfra Live for this opportunity. So I'm Suresh Srinivas. I'm a senior principal engineer at Intel, and a lot of people think of Intel as a hardware company, right? So I kind of want to talk a little bit about how software is a very critical part of Intel's success. So we have 15,000 or so software engineers, and we lead a lot of open source projects and contribute in meaningful ways in these open source projects. And we also work on a lot of innovative use cases where the Intel software are sometimes co-engineered with the customer or produced in the open source, is able to unleash some aspect of the hardware and innovation. So you can learn more about software. You can follow that Twitter link and get more information about software. So let's go to the next slide. The next slide. Yeah. Okay. So at Intel, we have opportunity to do meaningful work because a lot of us spend time at work. So whatever is your passion and whatever is brings you kind of more impact and joy, you're able to kind of like contribute. Then we also provide world-class benefits, right? With employees being able to participate in stock purchase plan, and we have some outstanding benefits with even things like community matching, right, to nonprofits of your choice. And Intel engineers are always looking at supporting the community in various ways, and it's a very inspiring culture and having a global impact. And diversity and inclusion is also a critical part of both our culture and our future goals. So Intel has set some very ambitious goals to have diversity and inclusion kind of up and down our entire hierarchy in a few years, right? So we are not quite there. I think we've been making really good progress. So if these things are kind of interesting to you, you can look at open positions that are available. We have positions in across all the different geographies in the US and in UK, in PRC, in India, and Ireland and Finland. So lots of different places. And the specific team that I'm part of, I have not listed the specific open source positions that are there, but you can send me a note and I'll help you navigate that through if all the jobs are looking a little overwhelming. So we do a lot of work in cloud software, but if there are things that you're interested either in AI or in IoT or in other sort of like technologies, like client in the browser, so there are opportunities across the entire board. Yeah, thank you again, Mark, for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Suresh. Intel, yeah, many thousands of open source jobs and employees working on open source. So I think we want to go next to Ken. Welcome him back on the show to talk about the openings at Red Hat. Take it away, Ken.
Hey, thanks, Mark. Appreciate the opportunity too. Yeah, so our main job site for Red Hat is jobs.redhat.com. You can find out a lot about what we have open. There are many positions in engineering, product, everything that you can possibly think of. It's a great site. It has a really robust search engines. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, Red Hat has 28 years of disruption in terms of open source. It is at the core of what we do. The company was born from open source. We consider ourselves the open source leader, and everything that we do on our day-to-day is geared toward that open framework. Our associates freely exchange their viewpoints and contribute and solve problems together. Our core values are connection, trust, transparency, collaboration, and meritocracy. And we really believe in these fundamentally. So I thought I'd highlight a few open infrastructure positions while I'm here really quickly. I put in some links as well as QR codes. You can point your phone at those to go directly to them on our job site. This first position is US remote. This is actually on my team, and it's for the Cloud Infrastructure Tiger team. And as I mentioned, it's an elite team of OpenStack hackers that go in and provide solutions for our customers. It requires networking expertise, You would work with key enterprise accounts, Red Hat OpenStack and virtualization, OpenShift. It's remote, and there is travel for that position. Next, please. So the next position is a software maintenance engineer, and this one is in the EMEA region, specifically Spain, Italy, and the Czech Republic. This focuses on technical customer support. It's working with key enterprise accounts again, and you troubleshoot and resolve technical issues, of course. And there's a lot of collaboration here with both the upstream and the downstream engineering communities. And there's also a good amount of reporting bugs and proposing fixes for this position. We also have this one. This is a senior software engineer for OpenStack networking. This is Germany remote. It is you'd be part of a globally distributed team on this one, working specifically on Neutron in the OpenStack project, which is the networking portion of OpenStack, OOO, which is our open source deployment method for OpenStack, which stands for OpenStack on OpenStack. And you'd write and review Python code in this position and work directly with the upstream and other Red Hat associates. We also have a position for senior software engineer in OpenStack networking, US remote. This is, again, a globally distributed team, but this one is working on Octavia, which is the load balancing as a service component of OpenStack, as well as Designate, which is the DNS as a service component of OpenStack. And again, the OOO deployment open source project that we use for our distribution of OpenStack. Again, you write and review Python code and work with the upstream community as well as your fellow Red Hat associates. This is a principal software engineer position in OpenStack networking. This is a US remote, globally distributed team focused on the networking projects in our distribution of OpenStack and specifically Neutron. Also some work on this one in the OOO project. Again, writing and reviewing code and working with upstream communities as well as your fellow Red Hatters. And was that the last one? I think that was, yes. Back to you, Mark.
Thank you. Bonus points for the creative use of QR codes. Those seem to be making a huge comeback these days. So great to see so many awesome open infrastructure jobs, especially, so many OpenStack ones. So next, we're going to bring back Hind from VEXXHOST to talk about how they're hiring.
Hello again. So at VEXXHOST, like I mentioned before, we do a lot of open source. Our entire infrastructure stack is built on open source tools. So here I've shared a few of the ones that you could potentially be working on. So OpenStack, Ceph, Kubernetes, Helm, and a lot more. And these tools you could be working internally at VEXXHOST, but these are tools that you could also be contributing to their individual open source projects in. And for the next slide, please. So I've shared a few of the positions that we have open currently at VEXXHOST. When it comes to OpenStack engineers, I think at this point we always have a position open. We're always expanding our OpenStack engineer team, and it is an entirely remote position. I know someone was asking earlier whether it's constricted. You have to be in specific regions of the world to be able to apply. That's not the case. You can apply regardless of where you are. Same goes for the Kubernetes engineer's job. That is at all times open because we're always expanding our team. But some positions like a data center technician, we haven't figured out a way to physically rack servers virtually. So that one might have to stay in person. And I also want to take a chance to mention that we also have some non-technical positions that are open. So even if you do want to work in open source, but you don't necessarily have the technical background, there's a lot of positions that you can start in and build your career from that. That's it from my side. Back to you, Mark.
All right, thank you, Hind, and thank you to everybody. Want to welcome everybody back on just for a moment, just to thank you all for participating and for investing in open infrastructure, investing in hiring and contributing upstream and helping customers deploy all this stuff in production. That's why we do all this work in the first place. And also thank you to everyone in the audience who's been participating from all over the world. I know I keep saying this, but with members in 180 countries, it amazes me every single time we get online and we see people from all over the world. So please participate. And if I want to give a quick shout out to all of the member companies, all the folks here today are here from member companies that are members of the OpenInfra Foundation. As I mentioned earlier, the newest platinum member is Microsoft. So if you want to get involved, you can apply for jobs. If your company wants to join as a member and support the efforts of the foundation, you can go to openinfra.dev/join. There's a path there for individuals. So you can become one of the 100,000 plus around the world, and that's free. And if your company wants to support the foundation, you can become a member through that path as well. openinfra.dev/join. Learn more about that and help us with this awesome mission supporting open infrastructure around the world. So thank you all to our distinguished panelists, some awesome speakers. Appreciate everything you're doing for Open Infra as a movement, as a foundation, as a community, all the software. And so I just want to say quickly a little bit about next week's episode. So next week we have another awesome episode lined up. We're going to be joined by the previous Super User Award winners and where they are now. So we're going to be hearing from folks from CERN that have the amazing Large Hadron Collider, largest machine human beings have ever built in the world. It's underneath the ground in 2 countries, so that's how big that machine is. China Mobile, VEXXHOST, who we've talked about here today, and OICR, which is the Ontario Institute for Cancer Research. Very, very important work. All of these companies in the past have won our coveted Super User Award. So important award, important topic. We want to see what they're up to these days. So they'll be joining us to talk about how their journey has progressed since winning that awesome award. And so make sure that you're subscribed and to all the different platforms. We're on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. So every Thursday at 1400 UTC is Open Infra Live. So also remember, this show is about the community, for the community. We want your ideas for shows. If you want to participate, if you've got something you want to contribute, ideas.openinfra.live. There's a form there. You can fill it out and tell us your brilliant idea for an upcoming show. So mark your calendars, and I hope that you all join us next Thursday and every Thursday at 1400 UTC. So thanks again to today's guests, and we will see you all next on the Open Infra Live. Thank you.